for joining us in the Humanity Assemble podcast today. Today, we have something a little different. I have gathered together three different unique voices from the Black community, mainly because I just want to pick their brains on a different series of questions that I have. So this is going to be super informal and just various topics. And yeah, let's just chat, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me. So let's do a round of introductions. I'll go last. Carice, quickly tell us who you are, what you do, why you do it.
Yeah. So I'm Carice, and I do believe in tacos deeply. But outside of that, in my spare time, I have been in city council for this. I'm in my second term currently right now here in my city in Clearfield. Um, Also, I served the Utah GOP in multiple capacities for about 6 years now. Well, actually more now, about 8 years now. Um, a lot of my work background initiated actually being an at-risk youth. I used to work with at-risk youth for almost 8 years. Well, nine, almost nine. Um, Job Corps gave me that really that first look on a population of individuals who legitimately get forgotten, where they just don't have that skills. They graduated high school, or maybe they didn't graduate high school, maybe they're minors, and they just need to find a way to do something for themselves. So working with that population of kids really kind of inspired me into working in the policy. So that's a little bit of my background.
Nice. Deshaun?
Yeah, I am an educator. I teach fifth grade um, in one of our lower income communities here in Chicago. And so I'm a big advocate for our children as far as education, their economics and their safety. So you'll probably see me, lots of times advocating, for our kids. I'm a part of a few organizations that mentor young Black males specifically. I do have two sons of my own. Um, did Carice say what party he was a part of? If he didn't, I am a registered independent, so you never know uh, where I'm heading in the conversation, depending on what it is. And so you can catch me on Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. So
Nice, nice. And you did throw in there that you teach in Chicago public schools,
yes, I
right?
do. Chicago
Okay,
Public Schools. Yes.
perfect, perfect. Carice, did you leave us on purpose? Your camera? Just curious. Okay, he will tap in a minute. Okay, King Introvert.
I'm here. I just had to help out my wife really fast.
Okay, no problem.
Yes, what's going on, guys? I'm King Introvert. Here located in Savannah, Georgia. I'm conservative. Libertarian, independent. I'm here. I'm studying cybersecurity. We'll be graduating in 2024. I have a podcast called Independent POV. It's on Spotify. You can catch it on Anchor or Spotify. Just here living it up.
Nice, nice. And I'm Christy. So professionally, I'm a mediator. I am also Humanity Assemble. I do podcasts. I write on Substack. I'm active voice on Twitter. And the main thing that we do is we are an active community organization. So we do a lot with fathers' rights, which I will talk about later, and also civic involvement. I have a campaign out called Swing Your Vote, and we will get into that during the course of the conversation as well. So let's get into some of the questions that I have for you guys. I think one thing that I was listening to Jason Whitlock when he did his space last week on Twitter. And my friend, I consider her a friend, Donnie, she is on fire. So Donnie is all about being a constitutionalist and the liberty movement. And so her question was, she doesn't really see a lot of people doing anything like in the community as far as liberty based, like why aren't people more active in activism? And Whitlock had a good response. It was different. It was unexpected for me. He said he does not promote everybody going out and basically, I'm paraphrasing him, trying to save the world. He said if he could have redone it, he would have, got married, had some kids, and I kind of started thinking about that. I said, if you work a full time job, if you're married, if you have kids, people now are just trying to make it. I mean, after you do all that, like, where's the time to work in the community? So, do you think that we have a bigger responsibility towards our community or not?
I think my question to that is because he's right. Like it's a lot going on. We have
Yeah.
families, we have work. Listen, it's a lot. But then the question becomes like, if not us, then who? Like, who's going to do it? Who's going to make that sacrifice? To go out and put in the work. And so that will be one of my questions.
Right, right. King, what do you think?
Um, I think Deshaun was saying, like if it ain't me, then who? And I think the far as like where do you go? Like who do you talk to get these activism or somebody like you are going to join up with you and you're fighting for your liberties? Do people know? Like you'll be surprised. People don't even know the laws within their own state as bad as I mean, you try and do liberty and you're trying to find justice, but people don't know, have no knowledge, even though they've been born and raised in the city, but you don't even know your own laws in your own city.
Mhm.
Right,
Nobody said anything or taught you anything about your own city laws. Where do you go for as officials? Who do you go? Who do you go talk to? You know what I'm saying? So you're just gonna run out there and be chattering all these laws and liberties, and people go like, "What are you talking about? Oh, for real? That we can do that? We can't
Mhm.
do that? You know what I'm saying? Did I vote? I ain't know I voted for that." And
Mhm.
yeah, that's my take.
Chris.
I would just say this: if I don't know that if the stat is exactly right, but I believe people tend to say that the amount of people involved in the civil rights movement was like 4 or 5% of Americans, really honestly, creating those lightning rod points that the world was talking about. The reality is that in general, historically, it seems that you don't really have a large group of people, general people, like people trying to survive every day, usually involved in movements. It's usually like smaller margins of people and things of that nature. Those people just have the time and the dedication to do it. I think the reality is that when you look at people trying to be guided about rights or like being able to be assertive about trying to change the world around them, it, it really does start with the basics. If you don't
Hmm.
understand the basics, legitimately, you can't move a needle. And I'll put it like this: when someone's starting something new, let's use weight loss. When someone's starting something new, you can't throw the whole kitchen sink at them. You can't say, do this, and this, run this hard and expect a result. It legitimately is a incremental. Where are you comfortable? Let's find your push point. The same thing with education. And the reality is that until Americans make those choices, it's not that they're trying to not care. It's really that the society is stacked against them in a way that they can't care at the moment. So that's how I view it.
Right. Now, I would not have said it like Whitlock, but I understand both points of views because when you are an activist, as you all know, you feel like you're the only one and like the building is on fire and everybody is over here, chilling and eating tacos, right? Like you feel like why aren't people getting this? So I understand when you're in the fight and you're in the liberty movement and you're in the struggle, why aren't people as outraged as you are about this stuff? And then you get off Twitter and you realize not only are people not outraged, they haven't even heard of most of the stuff. Like they don't know what you're talking about. They're just trying to make it, right? I think the biggest thing we can do to both for activism and social responsibility is our families, right? Save your family. If you have kids, raise your kids so that the next generation will be better than our generation. Work on your neighborhood, right? Can you save your block? Can you help your block? Can you educate your block? Can you teach your block about the Constitution, about your state constitution, about, you know, your their civil rights? Save your state, and then I think too many people jump towards trying to save the world. Now, if you're single and if you have made this your job because you're writing or you're podcasting and you're lucky enough to earn a living from that, then you have time, you know, to do that if this is your main, you know, thing that you're doing. But for everybody else, I think sometimes we condemn rather than just reach them where they are, right? And as educators, so I know, Deshaun, you're an educator. Carisi, do you have kids?
Yeah, I have a
Carisi?
child. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so you have a child.
Yeah.
King, you'll have children one day. No,
Yeah.
you're not having children.
I don't have any children.
Will you? But you'll have children one
Oh,
day.
really? Yeah, one day.
Okay, perfect. You'll have kids one day. What do you teach the youth about their role in social responsibility? Like, how are we educating them about their role in the greater society?
Whoever wants to go
Well,
first.
Oh,
it
Let's
doesn't
let
matter.
Deshaun. Let's let the teacher go. Go, Deshaun.
Well,
okay.
one thing I do, especially in my classroom and with my um, own children, I teach personal accountability and responsibility, right? I lead with, you're not going to always have me sitting in front of you saying this. So practice this now while you're with me. So when you go out, this is how you know how to navigate the world, right? So I'm teaching them to navigate, the world when they go out. And so it's shown through how I speak to them. It's shown through how I discipline, because at the end of the day, one day they're going to have to leave me, and I want them to be prepared. And so that's kind of how I navigate with my children and students.
Nice. Chris?
I would say there's multiple matrices when you think about children. So, in a governmental capacity, I think about the youth as essentially the future of humanity, the future of the tax base, the future of the class that's going to legitimately have to come into ownership of things, the people we pass the baton to. So when I look at the youth from a governmental standpoint, I ask myself, are they really prepared for tomorrow? Are they really going to be able to deliver in a society that as soon as they step out into the fray, as soon as they own their first vehicle or own their first home, they're paying taxes and doing things that they're just not familiar with. Uh, in a When I was a Job Corps capacity, it was more about foundational things can I teach a young person? Critical thinking. What
Hmm.
key critical thinking aspects can I teach a young person? You're never going to have all the answers, young man or young woman. But what you can, or what I can provide you, is the foundational things to look at in a scenario, and then you just critically think that through. So critical thinking, and then outside of critical thinking, another thing I stressed to my Job Corps kids was a lot of making sure that when you meet a goal, that you don't just be satisfied with meeting that goal. Find another one, because life is about progression and growth. And the second you get stagnant, and the second you might not, you might lose the pride in yourself. Now, home, a lot of for me is about understanding that society in a whole is a self-serving entity. It's not about fairness. It's not about good and evil. Legitimately, a lot of this is about a big, nebulous, ugly ball of ugliness that's been passed to you that has nothing to do with you, that is not your fault. So you have to navigate understanding that people are delivering things for themselves initially, and the people who care about you care about what are you going to deliver for yourself first. So you have to lower the basics and the fundamentals of life, learning the fundamentals of life, how to be able to cook and how to be able to clean and how to be able to think about money, how to be able to ascertain healthy relationships in a time where kids are sexualizing kids, where it is like these sexual conversations, these parents don't talk about it to their kids, so other kids get influenced by this TikTok era. um it's something to really talk about. So when we navigate with our children, it's about what is a healthy relationship? What's a meaningful relationship? And don't worry about love right now. Worry about what you need for you, because when you understand you, everything else will fall into place.
That's good. That's good. Now, King Introvert, I'm coming to you 1 minute, but I want to just, while I'm remembering this. So for Deshaun and Carice, you dealt with at-risk youth, and Deshaun, you're right in the thick of it, being in Chicago public schools. So how do you teach the youth that they have a role towards the greater, responsibility of, of the society, right? When they feel like they have so much stacked against them. In other words, how do you get past like the victimhood mentality and the circumstances that the kid may be in? How do you push past that and instill these values that we're talking about? Deshaun?
Well, one thing, I think somebody said it earlier, like, these kids, they know their situations, they know their circumstances. I think we have to pull back on the finger wagon, as we call it, and start giving them new avenues. There's something
Mhm.
else out here. Try this instead of this. Because I can tell you what you're doing wrong all day, every day. But then what am I going to do about it after that? Am I going to offer you these resources? Hey, what about this? How about you do this? There's a program over here that you can join. There's this. How many of us are doing that? Because we have the programs. We have the places for them to go, but who's leading them to these places instead of that finger wag? And that's where I'm at with it now. Well, we know the problem. We know what fix it. We've been talking about it. Now it's time to push them into these different spaces that'll change their mentality.
Right, right. Deshaun, you're breaking up just a little bit. Is it just
I'm
me, or can everybody else hear that? You're
It's a
lagging.
little small lag.
It's a little small lag, but you're dropping nuggets, so I want to hear every bit. I don't know if you can fix that. Um, but I agree what you're saying, and this is another reason why you'll never see me piling on to Chicago or Baltimore or any of the problems in the inner city if I haven't lifted a finger to actually help it, right? So through my nonprofit, the things that I do with mentoring dads, right? I
Mhm.
talk about fatherhood because I can point to things that I've done in the real world to combat that. And I think too, when we go back to, the Jason Whitlock thing, if every person who has a little bit of time could mentor one child, you don't,
Just one.
just one, just
Just one.
mentor one child. That would help. Carice, how did you push back when you dealt with at-risk kids? How did you cut through the matrix and cut through the any type of victimhood mentality that the rest of the world will allow them to try to wallow in?
Well, sometimes they are a victim. Sometimes these kids come in from their circumstances and they don't even know legitimately why are the way they are, why they've been damaged the way they've been, and how to deal with that damage. So, like, legitimately, when you're in an at-risk circumstance where I was a residential counselor, like, yeah, I have to recognize that sometimes this kid's been a victim in their life, sometime in their life. So then now how do I get them to go from victim to victor? Because that's really, I think, the question you're answering, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like they've been victimized, but how do I make them get past it? Well, a lot of the things is, I remember in my dormitory, there was this general and he had like 10 rules. And rule number one would be when you wake up in the morning, make your bed. And in my dorm, I mean, you had to make your bed anyway. It was part of the rules of the dorm anyway when kids had to go out. But it was a good standard to keep in the dorm, like make your bed. Make sure that you have pride in where you start your day at. And there were kids, and I always had to recognize. I mean, I had a dorm of like 72 kids. Um, so I had to recognize that there are kids who are in these at-risk situations, but they just need something to know something. And then there's kids who just don't know what to seek. And then there's some kids who just need some stability on what life is. So I've always created programs and leadership opportunities in my dormitory. you know, I had the first college pilot program where we went to Kaplan University free online. The kids would come and sit with me, and if they would do the Kaplan University, we would do things like English and credit and things like that on Kaplan. We would go on a college tour. And so I took kids on college tours for completing that in my dormitory, and a lot of those young men became inspired to come do things in their career, in their lives. A lot of them comment all the time, like, Mr. Thompson, thank you so much for the things you did for me in my youth. And I was young, man. I was only 26, 25, guiding guiding them. So it wasn't like I was some old, fogey. So I think the reality is that with these at-risk kids, if we humanize them, the opportunities you're not going to save them all, but it's about the one you can save. If you keep that mentality, it's about the one. I'm not going to get 50 one though. That's all I need. And I'll just say this quickly. Cities fail all the time on the youth. In my city, we have a youth commission. Our youth commission, one of our youth commissioners, we just appointed to be a planning commissioner, meaning that they get to actually, they're a minor, talk about the zoning in the city because it affects them.
Nice.
I wish more at-risk youth would come to city council. So now I got to go back to Job Corps because I just had a conversation that now I got to go back to Job Corps, talk to leadership at Job Corps to get a Job Corps kid on the youth commission. Because the reality is that if you start getting these kids at that age, you do a lot more saving and a lot less jailing. And I'm tired of society forgetting that. So I'll just leave it there.
I like that. So, and I agree. And I'm going to keep that. Some of them are victims, truly victims, and they're young. So how do we move them from victims to victor? Just remind me, I got to get Adam Coleman's book. There's a little plug for him there. King Introvert, what do you think? I know you're not a dad yet, but I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm also Job Corps student that graduated back in the day. Also, youth commission. I've been on youth commission when I was in high school, so those kind of did work. I mean, they didn't work the way I wanted them to work, but they did work. I mean, especially I'm coming from a kid that's come from a single mom. Like that definitely did wonders for me. So I think mentorship is a big thing that especially Black boys need,
Yes.
even Black men. So even my age, like I'm looking for mentors too. So, but yeah, like mentoring is something that Black community, especially the Black community and the boys, need mentorship in this day and age to negotiate, know how to do business, further their career, know how money work. You know what I'm saying? Because they do a lot of these boys coming from these toxic families, unfortunately. Can they be prevented? It can, but the cities have to put in the effort. I mean, the cities, they think they're doing something, but they really not. They playing lazy. They trying to play this thing like a Tesla, just trying to go, and it's just not going nowhere, bro.
So and I didn't know that because this is our first time getting to talk, but you are the experiment, right?
Yeah.
Coming from a single mom, coming from, graduating an alternative way and
Yeah.
having experiences that, cause you to go on a positive path. Now, I know when King Introvert approached me on Twitter, it was to talk about fathers' rights. So this is a good lead into that. So what I do, well, I went to law school and I quickly decided I didn't want to practice traditional law. So I went and I got my master's in mediation, and I immediately, hung my shingle and started mediating. But because my father was in my life, he's still married to my mother. He was so instrumental in my life. He always has been, that I really had a love and a heart for, kids that didn't have a dad. So I started doing family law mediations. And in doing the family law mediations, hold on, let me let Deshaun back in. In doing the family law mediations, I was really seeing that it's not that dads didn't want to be in their children's lives. There were a host of reasons as to why they weren't. So this one case, I always talk about this. It was a young Hispanic guy, and we were doing the mediation. And in mediation, you caucus, and that's like when you have one party, you'll take them separately. So I was shuffling between rooms, going between the two of them because there was a lot of tension between him and his child's mother. So all of a sudden, he looked at me. He had tears in his eyes, and he said, "Miss Christie, I'm going to walk away now. And I'm going to come back when my child is, 17 or 18, because if I stay, I'm going to kill her." And I'm a young mediator at this point, and I'm like, but when I looked at him, he was dead serious. And it's not that he didn't want to be a dad, but because of various factors, um, and a lot of times, women, we don't make it easy, right? So at that time, I decided that pure mediation was not enough. So I started Humanity Assemble, the nonprofit arm, in conjunction with the profits. So the nonprofit arm, what we do is we take a dad and say if I'm doing a mediation or not, they could just come in regular and they need help in another area. So maybe they need an expungement so they can get a better job so that they can better take care of their kids. Or maybe they need a mentor or a life coach because they just don't know where to go. Or maybe they themselves were abused. There's a lot of men that have been sexually and physically abused. And because counseling, especially for men, is not pushed in the Black community, they've never dealt with that. And so there's a lot of barriers that men face that prevent them from being the best father they can be. So the father's rights, not only am I an advocate that men should get equal access to their kids and, all that goes with that, but it's really taken a holistic view of the father and how can we help one father at a time be better, for his children. So that's what we do with Humanity. So that led nicely into the mentorship arm of it. One question that I did have for you. So when I was, again, I told you guys, I come from a 2-parent household, but when I was, 16, 17, I just lost my mind for a minute and I ended up pregnant, right? So I actually had a daughter my junior year of high school. I was lucky to have a good support system, married my child's father, and went straight off to college, law school, never missed a beat, right? So I remember, being proud of this story, which I still am, and thinking like, okay, this could be an inspiration for other girls who think that their life is over or think that they have to abort their babies. And I remember I was on a space and several people told me, we don't want to hear your individual success story. So, and I know Tim Scott has gotten a lot of that, right? He's gotten, with his slogan of going from cotton to Congress. So do you think individual Black success, right? Because if you see it, you can be it. I don't think we celebrate that anymore. I think now it's like, no, white people will use you as an excuse that everybody else should just be able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Right. So I'm torn on this. I don't know who wants to talk about that one.
I think when we take broad brushes and try to paint them and make it mold to everybody else's experience, you can't do that. Yeah. I, for example, grew up in a single family. My mom was single. My dad was in and out of jail for nonviolent offenses. It was always drugs, right? And thank God today he's doing great. But that was why he was going back to jail, in the 90s and the early 2000s, was because of his drug addiction. Did he want to be there? Absolutely. He just couldn't let the drug addiction go. And so, and then now my dad has 3 sons and 1 daughter. None of us have ever had a run-in with the law. We've never been incarcerated. We don't have anything on our records. All of us take care of our children. And so, like, how do you see what I'm saying? So when we take those broad brushes and try to, paint them with everybody and say, oh, look, this is the reason why, Black children or youth are not, or they're doing this because there's no fathers in the house, then I'm able to say, well, hey, wait a minute, because I didn't have one. and this. Now, am I the exception? You see what I'm saying? So when we have to really take a step back when we try to have those types of conversations. Because no, I didn't have my father, but I had a whole community. I had my grandfather, I had 5 uncles, and the men down at the Boys and Girls Club was watching out for us and everything. So it just depends on your circumstances.
Nice. King Introvert, what do you think?
I totally agree with Deshaun. Like, I'm a kid with my mom was single. My father actually wanted to be there, but my family kind of like didn't want him to be in my life. You know what I'm saying? I know who my father is. We talk. The only reason, another reason he wanted to get away from my mom, but he still wanted to be with me, is because he moved to Atlanta. But then, like, we reconnected it when I was like in sophomore year of high school, and I wasn't mad at all. I was happy. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he told me that like you have a little brother that goes to the same school as you, but which he was riding the same bus. I ain't know who, but which was
Wow.
kind of yeah, like that kind of like really he's been riding the whole bus. Yeah,
But I guess that question is, do you feel like if you lead with, hey, I was a troubled youth, but I made it. Not that you can make it too, because I
right,
don't do that, but hey, I was a troubled youth, you can make it. Here's how I did it. Here's the
right.
blueprint. Or do you think that that will be co-opted by, conservatives or whoever to say everybody should be able to make it when we know not everybody, some people do need assistance
Right.
or mentorship.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you lead it with policies that is going to enable those individuals to
Hmm.
have that they may not have that same success story, but they can like start from here. Here's a
Right.
policy, here's a tangible that you can start from here regardless of what happened to you. And but instead of just saying, "Oh, here's this token black person,
Right.
Tim, Byron," you know what I'm saying? And they'd be like, yeah, and blah blah blah. And it's like, but you ain't got no policies to back it what you saying. So why should I take your words and you just saying, and then the way they say it, they just say it just to spite everybody else. You don't say it
Right.
in a way of somebody can give them the baton and run with it. You do it as like, ha ha ha, look at me, but I made it and you can make it, and ha ha ha. And it's like,
Yeah.
nah, bro. Like the way you saying it, the way you coming off, and the where there's no, instead of that you actually want me to make it the same way as you, is that's falling off. It falls short some deaf ears, and you get the whole token.
Carice, answer that question, but also answer it in the framework of how Tim Scott does it. So, does Tim Scott use his story in the wrong way or in the wrong manner?
His story is his story. I think that's the problem with society. I think that's the problem with even in the black community. We have this expectation that if it doesn't fit a certain mold, then is it valid enough? His story is his story. Now, if you agree with how you disagree or you don't think anyone can ascend that way, then you leave that for the outside discussion. But to me, the reality is that when someone makes a stride, they made a stride. And I was in a space one day and I was having a discussion about the black community, and there was a point where I asked the question like, if this is a victory for the black community, why don't we celebrate it?
Right.
Regardless if it came from the right or left, but in this regard, it came from the right. It gets denounced or you got to find something wrong with it. Even during the I remember during the Bethune Cookman situation when I was discussing with the black community and Uncle Luke's room about the funding coming to college and are historically black colleges underfunded? Like, yeah. But the reality is, I was like, in a new appropriation, these things have kind of changed. You have the GOP who are willing to fund things in Florida. Maybe there's a bridge there. Basically, is what the argument I was making. It was like something happened, and these people legitimately said, no, it can't have happened that way. And I'm like, here it goes. It did. I mean, we don't want to see victories when we get them. And I think that is a problem in our community. It creates a narrative of like, that the success can only come from the benevolence of like government, like, or from like the aspect of like luck. Why can't black people just be smart? Why can't black people just be amazing? Why can't we be genius? And why can't, even though we have people in our situation, and when we have people who rise above those situations, why don't we ask them what the blueprint is? And
Right.
sit down together as a community and say, how'd you do that, bro? Because we got these kids in this situation. Let's see what we can do together. Then it becomes less of a like a give pull. I don't like your ideology, so you're not black enough, and more of a let's unify where we find things we agree on to bring tangibles and bring success to the kids we know who are black kids are going to guide the future. So that's pretty much
But
how I look at it.
I have a question. How, to your point, Carice, with everything you just said, how much of that is like the average? How much of that is coming from the average Black American, right? Like outside of Twitter, outside of these rooms, outside of politics and podcasts, how much of that? Because I think, it, to me, on the outside looking in, at somebody who's looking at me in my community, it seems like there's a lot of bad faith arguments happening. And that's why I try to stay closer to my community, excuse me, than the rest, because I'm able to say like, no, that's not what's happening. And so my question is like, how much of that is even coming from the average Black American?
Sure.
Because we can I'm sure we can find tons of people that has that same story.
Yeah, Twitter is not real life. And thank you for
Yeah,
reminding me that of Deshaun.
It
No,
really
but I want
not.
I want to answer
It
this
really
question with
not.
this. I think our society is changing and it is permeating. When I sit in a black church on a Wednesday, and the pastor's asking me about Ron DeSantis and about the erasing of Black history at our civic night, and there's regular people, everyday people there, churchgoers. Some of them, are educated, but a lot of just regular everyday people, and they're nodding their head, and they're asking me. There are black people in Utah history that did incredible things. Are they trying to take away from the great black people in Utah? When that comes from and Bishop is probably respectfully maybe about 80, thinking when that's coming from that someone of that age, and then another person, another bishop. We had a Bible ban situation in Davis County in my state, and one asked me, "Well, what happened to the Bible? Did you guys revive that? Did you save that?" That dichotomy of the black church and the average black person actually came alive in that atmosphere on Wednesday for me, and it was very illuminating because I think this is the issue. People are talking about it, Deshaun, but it's not the mass of their how they move in life, right? Like they're
right,
aware, right?
right, right.
But at the end of the day, right, it's like there's core other issues that are more meaningful to them that we're legitimately arguing, and that is why we're getting these bad faith arguments from the community, right? Because we're misrepresenting the fact that people are aware, but there's other broader things the community look at that may be conservative or maybe progressive or just whatever that we can't even have real discussion on because of the lightning rod things that we're just aware of. So
Yeah.
I think I get what you're saying on that.
Deshaun, I'm going to use that. Bad faith arguments,
Oh,
manufactured issues that aren't even issues. I love that.
and a lot of it too, to add on, and a lot of them, they're using like dated data. Like the data is old. Like, and those folks had a fit all last week when we like, yeah, black fathers are involved, and they just couldn't let it go. Well, look what this says. This 75% of parents. I mean, our kids are born out of wedlock. I'm like, y'all, and so it's like. And sometimes you get frustrated because you want to beat them up the side of the head. Like, will you please think and just, I'm telling you what I see every day. And
We're going to hit,
I'm not seeing this.
we're going to hit the fatherhood issue last. We're going to hit that last because we're going to hit it hard. But I have a question, Carice. You kind of teed this up. What is woke?
So it depends on what you really want to discuss it as. So woke in the initial idealism used to be black people used to be on the cool just talking about like, hey, these systems just is like the way things is popping off. you already know that something ain't looking right, bro. You better stay woke out here, bro. These police doing A, B, and C, bro. Hey, look, bro, 5-0s on this, that, and the third. Hey, they didn't hit this corner here and here. Hey, bro, they didn't came up on this.
Yep.
Big Mama house, the candy lady. They harassing the candy lady, bro. You better stay woke out here because the reality is the police is harassing. Like that's how it used to be. Like legitimately, that was like the to me a lot of what wokeism was when we kind of use those terms like slang wise. Then it became when I seen how Black academia sees it, it did become like a topic of discussing like more white supremacy or more so systemic racism, right? And then now we're in this big old gaggle that wokeism is just legitimately, especially as a Republican who understands like the discussion on critical race theory. I'm not a critical race theorist by any means, but the issue is I see why Republicans will get to banning books that legitimately are no threat to nobody. Because when you see a book written pre 2000, but you don't know anything about Black history whatsoever, and you've been studied in this system that leans so much of our history to people who didn't look like us, then the reality is that you see something that maybe we know is in the fabric of society. We look at it and we just don't know how to deal with it. So then we overreact instead of talking to the teachers who have pedagogies. And maybe you just have an issue with the pedagogies. So I think the reality is now wokeism is a thing where people in general are looking at things of color in a lens that honestly and truthfully sees it as this may be a threat to meritocracy. And the reality is that there is a struggle of meritocracy in America, but wokeism doesn't necessarily talk about where meritocracy fits or stands and how we get to the right aspect of what meritocracy means to Americans versus those who legitimately want to have real discussions about their ancestors. So that's how I would sum it up. And I know it's probably more of an intelligent stance than most people, but
Let's get
that's
King in
because
here.
society doesn't like woke.
King introvert, what's woke?
Well, like Kari said, it was this thing that you heard in the streets talking like, because I didn't hear woke in my city, but I heard it more online on Twitter, and they were talking about about the government, the police, what they doing. Here's a video. Look. Did you see that? Here's a video. They just passed this law. Stay vigilant. Stay woke. You know what I'm saying? Gotta be watchful. And then I saw it get co-opted by people that are not black, and now they're saying woke, but they're saying woke, but they're saying something different, and it's not even what we're saying, but it's something that they're saying, and it's not what the same language of Black Americans is actually saying. And then it gets turned into this toxic thing where white Americans like, oh my god, they saying woke, woke, ban woke, and it's really coming from the banning of woke towards people who are saying woke but don't even know fully understand what woke even really even means. And it's not even people that even look like black people, because black people came up with the word, but you got other people that are not Black Americans using the word woke, and then you got the same non-Black Americans trying to ban the word woke from other non-Black Americans. So, and then I look at it where you got Black liberals, like they taking it completely far now. It's like a LGBT thing. Now they saying woke. Now it's like I'm like, y'all so woke, all y'all just need go back to sleep. Like Charlamagne said, y'all so woke, just go back to sleep, y'all. Cause y'all, I mean, when I look at them, it's like y'all practically actually doing what the government tell you what to do in the first place. So y'all just sleepwalking. So
I mean, I remember Spike Lee. That was my kind of when I think about woke, I think
Yeah.
of Spike
Yeah.
Lee. And
Yeah.
he would be like, wake up, right? Like
yeah,
pay attention, like
yeah,
stop just sleeping through life. Like if you
yeah,
just look at the definition, like what's
yeah,
the opposite of woke? Sleep. So it just
yeah.
doesn't even make sense how they co-opted it. But my
Right.
thing is they can have it. Let them
Yeah.
have it. And even as a conservative, because I'm very conservative, but I still don't use the term because it just feels weird. Nobody exactly knows what it is. You know, but we don't like it, but we don't
Right.
exactly know what it is.
And also, you got like again, we got token blacks when they talking about like even movies, like they talking about this movie woke and that movie woke, and I'm like, I've watched probably half of those movies, and it's like half this stuff is not even woke. It's just a movie. Like they saw that movie with I forgot that actress. It's about the little spaceship. Like if y'all saw it, it was a spaceship on the farm with two black people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they were saying that was woke. I'm like, where? There's nothing in here that's woke. There's
Yeah.
literally it's about a spaceship swallowing up people. There's nothing woke about
Yeah, it
this.
was
So
like cyan
it was
was it
nope.
science
Yeah,
fiction?
nope. Yeah,
Yeah,
nope.
all that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like that was so woke. I was like, there's nothing woke in this movie. I'm like, I had to see it twice trying to see what they
To
were
even
saying.
understand. Yep.
So I was like, there's nothing woke in it. It's just a movie.
Yeah, just know when they start talking about woke, that's like when I kind of start tuning out because I'm like
Yeah,
half of the people can't even define what they mean by the term
right.
woke. Like it's literally stumped some people if they ask them like, okay, what's woke? Well,
Yeah.
All right, let's get into black men not marrying. What is up with that? And then let me frame it this way. So Deshaun, you mentioned the numbers about fatherhood. I think now the number is 67% of children, do not have a father. Black children do not have a dad. But when you break down the number, if a father is living in the home, the mother is still counted as a single mom. Even if he's there co-parenting full time, even if he's there in the home, he could be in the home the whole time. She's still a single mom. Now, why are black men, especially, I think you guys are, a little bit younger than me. So really your generation are not buying into marrying. You're more cohabitating, testing the waters. A lot of people aren't getting married, period. Um, what is up with that? I'm looking at you, Deshaun. Not to put you on the spot.
You know what? Now, this is where that whole father missing piece come in because, right? I didn't get to see my grandfather marry because his wife died before I was born, and he never remarried. She died, and he took care of all of his 13 children.
Wow.
And so, but I did see uncles and aunties get married, and aunties get engaged. But I think my father proposed to my mother. I remember he proposed to her at one point when we were younger. I do remember that. But again, he was back and forth. So I never got, to see that union. And just things happen, right? And so now I look at it for me, it's going to eventually happen. But now I'm breaking the generational curses now, right? So I was actually the first to graduate in my family from college twice,
Wow.
out the whole family. That's
Congratulations.
granddaddy, 13 kids and grandkids. So I'm the grandkid
Nice.
that graduated. So if you're breaking that curse, then you're breaking that curse to make sure that you don't have fatherless children. Now, let me tell you, the man in my family does a great job of taking care of their kids, married or not. So we're trying to break that curse and then trying to make sure that, education and making sure we're financially stable and, all the good stuff that leads up to that. So I guess okay, we've talked about it. And so I guess my in conversation, my excuse has been I just really want to be ready. I want to be. And seriously, I want to be ready. I have friends who's gotten married already. They got married in their 20s, and it didn't survive. Again, that's
Mhm.
not a blueprint for everybody. But I'm watching these things happen, and I'm like, okay, maybe I can get a better foundation, and then we'll move toward that. So I think we're closer than not now. We have the conversation often, and so that's where I'm at on that.
So I think, and I'm coming to you next, King. But I think one thing that we also do through humanity is trying to make family and marriage sexy again and something to be desired, right? Because right now you have, everybody partying and turning up, and you have the Cardi B, everybody can be a bad B, and even though she's married and has kids, but the teens listening to it, they don't realize that part, right? So we're trying to make conservative family the center of what we even do, even through my business, Humanity Assemble. So I've gotten that it's white supremacy to focus on a nuclear conservative family. It's white supremacist talk. I've gotten to focus on fathers being, the key to societies. That's white supremacy talk, and that's racist. Um, when I really think, if you think back to what destroyed our communities, it really started with what? The crack epidemic, right? All the men, the mass incarceration.
Well,
I
I
no,
got to
I said
push
the
back.
abortion
Hold
era
on.
personally, but that's probably conservative.
Well, some your conservative counterparts will beg to differ because they say it was LBJ and his
Yep, exactly. It was the it
this
was the abortion era. What they did to the black church, stepping in there, convincing the black church that killing our babies. I mean, I even tweeted on my timeline that black woman's talking about. We talk about intangible for community. You bring in abortion. Like I really do think the Great Society and the Margaret Stanger era really just reformed families for us in a bad way, bro.
Okay,
Including
so you're
racial
going back a
slavery.
little further than me.
yeah,
You're
you
going
went
back a
further.
little further. But
But
regardless, the breakdown of the family, for me, until that is restored, that's the key, I think, to saving the Black community is focusing on the family. I think now, because so many women are having kids at a younger age, and even though I had a child, by the time I was 17, I was a mom at 17. Like even today, she's not my best friend. She's my child. And I've always, I had to grow up fast and in a hurry. We aren't partying together. We aren't hanging out. We still, don't really do that stuff. And so I think until the family is proper position is restored, I think we'll kind of continue to see some of these
But look
things.
at what society did to our women. Like legitimately, there are women who made some choices when they were young, and I don't look at all those women in any negative manner. But I will say this: that the way we value women, like it's just like we don't value women, and women in society get more value from being devalued than actually valuing themselves. And until we legitimately like solve that issue, I think it's hard for the family because and men, we have to step up and learn what is really valuing our sisters mean, and then legitimately asking ourselves like, how what type of women do we wish to seek for the future? Like all those two matrices for the youth is like going to be important, and until we get young girls to know how meaningful they are and how they truthfully in today's society, for it may be controversial to say, but they set the tone on sex. The reality, the Me Too era, all that, they set the tone on sex. They have the power, really power to be like, no, I want a healthy, good relationship for myself before I get into this or whatever. I really do think
Mhm.
that it does matter, and men would step up. More men need to step up to that standard, personally speaking. But I'm more traditional, I guess you could say.
Well, because you are married, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like anytime I have a responsibility, like, and I have multiple dads. Like, I look at fatherhood way differently because the reality is like I understand it's about making a baby, all that, but like my dad, my dad, he was an abuser. So I grew up in domestic violence. My mom was getting beat up all the time. At the age of like 9 or 10, I'm fighting my daddy. So you know what I'm saying? Like that was my first foray into fatherhood. Then my mom moved on. He was a good man, but he had his flaws on drugs. And then I got adopted, and I just see my dad. That's my daddy too. I just see my dad like not even, but like at the funeral like a few months back, I see my dad. So, like, to me, fatherhood is about who is willing to step up and take the role and the responsibility to make sure that that child is raised holistically and really and prepared for tomorrow. Because the reality is that if the man who made the baby wants to be involved, truthfully, yeah, there's things going on and whatnot. But I will say this: a determined person is a determined person, and I know and I know when people are determined to get what they're gonna do, they're gonna get it. And so I don't have a lot of empathy for deadbeats, only because I know for a fact that if a man want to get it, he gonna get
Right.
it.
Right.
King introvert. So you're don't have kids. You're not married. Are you? Tell me your view. Tell me your views on marriage.
I mean, it's a beautiful. My grandparents were married 43 years. I want to mimic that. I mean, those my kind of like my parents. You know, I mean that most of my behaviors come from the mimicry of that relationship. Instead of my mom and my dad, it was my grandparents. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like it's very toxic out here. You know, it's very heavy. It's very far as talking to a woman and you looking at celebrities, men that got half a mil, they're worth millions of dollars. They getting divorced left and right. And then you like, if this guy's worth millions of dollars and getting divorced by his wife that they was together maybe 10, 25 years, it's like, what kind of chance do I have? You know what I'm saying? A person that's trying to build himself and maybe get to that 1%. But then if I meet a wife, is she going to be for me or for money? So, and then I would like to see different. I think men are looking at the laws. I think laws need to be changed to make things fair. I mean, because right now everything's to the left with the woman. Like, to men have to learn what different states to get married in, because California has been, I guess, the battleground when it comes to marriages, and it's everything to the woman, like 401k, everything. I'm like, dang, like look at Dennis Robinson, everything is gone. Money, half of everything is gone. So it's like, is marriage a money thing, or is it a where two people having kids and we can build a legacy? I mean, which is it?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely the second
But
half.
too, I'm sorry to, I like to throw a wrench in the conversation sometimes.
Yeah.
Listen, some of these parents who are two-parent households, they're toxic.
Yeah.
But that's
True.
another conversation.
Right.
I mean, the stories that I've heard, y'all, two-parent, about fathers getting their daughters pregnant. And we're not going to touch that. We don't have time for that right now. But when you think about, it's about what type of parent you are. Because you can have a two-parent married household all you want. But if you're toxic, that means nothing. You can walk through the door, cursing your kids out. You walk through the door, you had a bad day. Or you walk through the door and you drunk because you've been out drinking all night and you hitting your kids upside the head. We got to think about all of this. And that's how I like to think about it. Think about what it is. Our mission should be, and I always say this. I said when women get pregnant, we should have parental classes for the male and the female. This is how you take care of your kid. This is what you do. This is what you should not be doing with your kid. Because a lot of us, at one point, we are just learning how to be a parent.
Right.
When you have that first kid, you learn from what you saw. Okay, my mom did this. My mother only knew to scream, for us to stop. So I'm gonna scream at my kid. No. So it's about, how to be a good parent, whether you're in a two-parent household or not.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I do not pile on to single moms because I understand. And there are plenty of single moms that do an excellent job because they do, have their kids in the Boys and Girls Club, or they do have mentors, or they have, extended families. And I hear you, Deshaun, but I'm still going to go back to this one more time. Now, I think what I heard King Introvert say is that the reason men aren't marrying is not just because of them, but it may be because of the women. It may be because of the mentality. I remember there was a shift, and I remember when it happened. Before, the man always paid for the dates. It was just standard. If I'm going on a date, I'm not pulling out my wallet, right? And then there was a shift. Like, y'all flipped a light switch, and y'all was like, y'all are using us for these meals, and you don't care nothing about us, and y'all are all about 50-50. Or sometimes a lot of men is like, no, she's paying. Because what is there, especially out there in Atlanta, good luck, women, because of the ratio, right? There's so many more single women than men. So is a lot of that because of, the gold digging mentality and the women playing games? And then if a woman wants to be a bad bee and she wants to be independent, well, y'all about to show her what that feels like. Do women have a role in why young Black men are not seeking marriage in large numbers?
I mean, go
I
ahead,
got to pay.
No,
I'm gonna say I got to. I mean, you brought up Cardi earlier.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
And I just want to say, like, look what Offset, or not Offset, sorry, who's her husband again? But look what he did to her in public. Like the way, like honestly, he like the fact of how he cheated and how she accepted that, and how they went back and they made that they made that union. Now, the thing about it is this: there are just some young girls who are going to think that's an acceptable way, a dynamic in a relationship. And I don't want to be overly critical of Cardi B's choice. I'm just trying to make it real that there are just some young women who will look at that and say, maybe that's okay. So it's like, how do we really fight the dynamic of, that's why I talk healthy relationships so much. How do we really inform the dynamic of what is a true healthy relationship? Because the reality is that maybe, and that's why I don't want to be overly critical. Maybe for Cardi and her husband, that was a healthy choice, and maybe they're fine now. I don't think so personally after the things on social media, but the reality is that maybe that is the thing. So it's like that to me is where the tone is at for me.
Right. Deshaun, what were you going to say?
I actually forgot. I forgot.
I was basically saying, like, are the women to blame because of their independent nature now, like, and their bad bee? And so because the switch came when men stopped paying. Why did y'all stop paying?
Yeah. I mean, for me, first of all, I was burned one time, and you never gotta worry about me paying for anything. It's when I used to go on dates and I was dating, it was hard. Like, I remember graduating from undergrad, and the girl at the time wanted to take me out. I'm like, oh, I don't want her to pay. And I'm like, because that was just me. That was what I did. I came up, you pay for the lady. But I mean, as far as independent, I can't say. We will have to talk to those women who have those ideologies, I guess. I don't know.
What do you think, King Introvert?
I mean, if they saying I'm independent, don't need no man, so we at the date, so it's like, hey, you think I'm gonna cover this? And it's like you said, you don't need me, right? So we'll go oblige yourselves. I mean, I'm gonna pay my food, you gonna pay your food, okay? Since you don't need me, allegedly. So but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of on the women's with this independent Sasha Fierce woman king thing. I mean, women are taking account of how women dress. They looking at celebrities. They like, oh, I've seen that before. I ain't gonna date that one. Or I may maybe talk to her, but I'm not gonna be serious. I mean, it's gonna be short and sweet. And then if she doesn't want to date me, I'm like, okay. Because usually men be like, come on now, this date, come on now. Now they checking out like, oh, you don't want to date me? Okay, bye.
Right. Now, is this one of the things where, I mean, because I do have daughters of dating age, but I'm also their mom, so I teach them in a certain way. So, for instance, my one daughter, she only had 2 boyfriends. So her first boyfriend, he paid. And, we were in the South at the time. So Southern men, maybe not Atlanta. I don't even consider Atlanta the South no more. Like, y'all are different down there, but like Mississippi, true, old South, not new South. Men are paying for dates, and, parents are still teaching their boys, to pay for dates. But when they broke up, they were still friends and they were going out to dinner. And so I told my daughter, absolutely not. Is he not paying for your food? Because if you guys aren't together and it was your choice to break up, if you then let him pay for you, you're then using him. So you pay for your food, he pays for his. So is this another one of these manufactured arguments from social media where I'm hoping the women aren't really that bad? Like, I think her name is Portia, and she did the whole thing where she would never date a bus driver. Did you guys see that? I think that was her name. And she was like, well, if he owned the bus, if he, please tell me this is just a manufactured social media construct, and women are not out here being that bad.
That's so. Listen, I went back after undergrad to work at McDonald's because I had nothing lined up, nothing. And at that time, while I was dating, they didn't have a problem with that because I was trying to work. And even in the garbage man, garbage, whatever she said, the bus driver, that's what she said. Even that, my mind went to like a Greyhound or something, automatically, or like the CTA. And those bus drivers make a good living. They got benefits and retirement plans and all. So that's where my mind went to. And so with my mind going there, I'm like, sis, you stupid. So it's got to be a social media thing. I don't think the average a woman would say that on the street.
Well, King is the only one of us still dating. So King, is it that bad out there? Like, are women as shallow as social media is making it seem, or is it just more blown up?
I think it's kind of both. I think it's kind of blown up and it's kind of reality too, in ways. With the whole bus. I mean, I kind of was agreeing with Portia. It was like, and my thing is like, why can't you help him own the bus? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you want him to own the bus, and then if he did own the bus, I don't even think you still, the goalpost would still be widening. He owns the bus now. You still gonna date him? No. He's gotta be own of a company, IT company. He's gotta make 100 million now. Now the goalpost even further. You know what I'm saying? So it's always these continuing goalposts, that loopholes that men are just fed up going through. You know what I'm saying? It's like why do I have to keep going through these hoops with you? And all I want is a spouse. That's all I want is a spouse, and make some kids and grow old.
Carice, my last question, and I'm going to start with you. So your story is amazing. So, we got to come back just to talk about your story because I'm super fascinated now, Carice. But coming from where you came from, what was it that you saw in the culture that pushed you into activism?
Well, for me, I've always just looked at Black history. For me, informs a lot of my conservatism in a lot of ways. And the reason why I say that is because, for me, a lot of the tenets that made us strong were these tenets that really we valued, really the core things of society. Now, the way these conversations now have been like redone and reassessed, and honestly, just truthfully, just made ugly. I think the reality is that for me to keep true, like what kept me like through it was that knowing that these things are more likely to bring me success. These type of choices are more likely to bring success. Now, if I live those choices, even if I fall short at times, at least it puts me a step closer to where I wish I want to be for myself. So for me, when I use, or when I decided to get into activism, how you call it, or really just to me being politically aware and involved, It was about the fact that I wanted to inform my community that these is what processes look like, but at the same time, I'm informed from an angle that I know what's going on, and I know how you feel. So even though you may not agree with all my solutions, let's see what solutions you do agree with so we can keep pushing those forward, because the reality is like that is how, to me, how you get progress. So that's pretty much how I view
Nice, nice. Deshaun, what pushed you into being outspoken?
it. He froze for a second. Okay, he back there.
My grandfather, no, no. He was outspoken, by the way. I they asked me a question when they interviewed me at my last school, going to my last school, and it was like, "Why do you want to come work here?" And somebody most people say the surfacey stuff. I'm here to save the black children. I'm here to no. I said I'm here to help pull out what's already in our black kids, because there's something in there and most folks are not looking for it. And so I view us and our kids differently from the world, because I know uh, what they're capable of. And so because it's easy to get on Twitter and tweet out, statistics and videos of folks fighting and all this type of crazy stuff. It's easy to do that. But it's harder to go and make change, because I can sit on there all day and say what they're not doing, but just being a part and being a voice for them,
Right.
because they don't know what you're saying about them day in and day out. I do. And so to make sure that I'm quote unquote protecting them, I have to lift my voice. And some days it's times 10. I'll go back with you all day. But these are our children, and I see hope. You don't see hope. You see statistics. We're two different people. And so that's what prompted me to be outspoken, because we're great. We have great great legacies, great histories, great successes, and so I want to add on to it.
Nice, nice. And I mean, I think I just found you when we went to Chicago with Vivek. But I knew I had to talk to you in some form because your voice on Twitter is very unique. So you do call balls and strikes. Like one minute I'm like, he got to be a Democrat, and the other minute I'm like, that sounds real conservative. So I like your independent lane. I like you, talking mess to whoever, whenever, right? And I do like you. I do like you being that beacon for Chicago. I love that, and thank you for just standing in the gap and just showing up every day for those kids and not moving, out to the suburbs, taking your
Absolutely.
2 degrees and moving out.
I'm trying to find a house around here right now. She, I call her Mama Bear. She looking at me like, you better not move over there. I'm like, yeah, I'm looking. So I like to stay within the community. So
yeah, thank you. King Introvert.
Yes.
What made you be outspoken? But besides the the podcast and wanting to talk, like, because again, especially when you've obtained education or on your way to, it's easy for you to take your ball and go home.
Right. The reason why I'm so outspoken, like everybody has their own individual story. I think I can add to it to more of a clear and understanding. I don't like to just I can't claim myself having the same story as everybody else's, because I feel like that would be intellectually dishonest. So I like to give like a clear, okay, here's my story. I know I can't really relate to everybody, but I do have some similarities to everybody else is going through. And yes, there are also problems, but I'm open to listen to solutions and looking to listen to whether it be come from a Republican or a Democrat. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully it's smart solutions, but I'm just open to speak on my behalf. And people, from what I've been talking to people, it's like, oh, that's different. It's not as the same as I thought it was. Or you're not coming from, I mean, you coming from my background, you may look like me, but it's completely different, but yet similar. So I think I bring a very uniqueness to the fold.
Right. No, definitely. And even talking about the fatherhoods, I mean, my brain is turning as to having each of you gentlemen back individually, just to talk about your experience with your father and how that's going to shape you either to be a better dad in the future or now, because that definitely fascinates me, working in the era of father's rights. And so I definitely see three unique men. Like, we are not a monolith. Like, that's the thing that
Yeah,
just like
we're
kills
really
me.
not.
Um,
Yeah, we're really not.
we're not a monolith. We all have, unique journeys, unique stories. And I am interested in finding how you three, survived and are, thriving and, giving back to the community. I mean, I didn't know that about you three when I scheduled this. So that's, that was good luck on my part. But thank you. Any last questions for me at all? No.
Um, I guess, like, what would you say to the young ladies of today, since you see everything with the Beyonce's, Cardi B's, and everything? I guess they're fans and the feminism in general, like, and especially in the black community, because black feminism is very heavy, it's very toxic. Like, what could you say to, what could you speak to that?
What I would say to the moms is to um, limit your children's social media, especially when they're young, right?
Yeah.
Don't let social media be the number one influence of your child, right? The mom should be the parent should be who the kids are asking questions of, not social media, right? Also, one thing that I did, because I have three girls, so one thing that I did with my girls is I don't let them watch videos when they were
Mm.
young, right? I just have like that standard rule. We're not watching videos. And then it wasn't until their teen years that they were really allowed to go on like YouTube and different, now some of the stuff they'll get it at school, they'll borrow somebody's phone, you know what I mean? But for the most part, the constant social media forming the perception of what their values are. And I raised my kids in California, very liberal. And so I saw their liberal viewpoints forming. And we went and we lived in Mississippi for 4 years. And I was able to kind of more pry them away from even more of the social media. We limited the phone use. And so now they really are their own, individual people. And they'll point certain things out, like, about different trends or about different feminist, ideas. Now, yeah, they're not as conservative as their mom, but they're, for the most part, I think they're headed on a solid roll. But that would be my number one thing, is watch social media, watch
Mhm.
what your kids ingest, and talk to your children. So one thing we do is we're not Jewish, but we observe the Sabbath. So we spend a good chunk of the day on Saturday just with our kids. Not every Saturday, but most Saturdays, just with our kids. And we use that time to like just talk to them. Like, how was your week? And then we teach them things, like my husband's really big on civics, constitution, and finance. That's probably like the three things, the lessons that we give our kids. So just teaching your kids, because even if they go to the best school district or even if they have the best teachers, like Deshaun, there's still going to be gaps that the
Yep.
parent needs to be the instructor. right? So are you teaching your kids about the Constitution and what it says about their rights? Are you teaching them about financing, right? About finances, why it's important to save, what different mechanisms there are. So that's what I would say. Spend time with your kids. You're their teacher, you're their influence. They should be able to talk to you, but you're not their friend. That would be like my number one kind of parenting advice, especially to young moms, because it's easy to fall into that trap of being a young mom and still kind of, being heavy in the culture yourself, but realizing that you also have this responsibility of this person to raise. Yeah. So thank you, gentlemen. And we will definitely do this again.
Most
Absolutely.
definitely.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to the Humanity Assemble podcast. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to be notified when we drop videos in the future. Follow us on our other platforms and continue to help us build humanity, one piece at a time.